Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Randy, and you may have noticed I haven't been around for a while, but that's because I've been on vacation. I went out to Ohio to a film convention there, and then I went to Washington, D.C., see a cousin, and spent some time around Washington, D.C., and on the way home I went through Virginia, and I did stop and see another Vinyl community member in Sam St. John. Everyone check out his channel. And we got to go out and have dinner. But it was a fun time, but I'm back now, and I had promised before I left to do a video in response to a thread started by Bill, Bill's Vinyl List over in Scotland. And it was to show the history of rock and pop music in 20 albums. Well, I'm mostly focusing on rock. And I'm going to try to show the history of rock music in 20 albums. Now I know I'm going to miss some subgenres and some different trends. And how rock music started is kind of a complicated thing, and that you can go all the way back to Jimmy Rogers and the string bands and incorporating the different blues styles. But I'm really going to start with in the 40s when the term rock, which we kind of know what that meant back in these jump blues records of the 40s. But I'm going to start with one of the hit makers in that time, and that's Roy Brown. And his big song was Good Rockin' Tonight, which I think was 1947. So when it came out, when later covered by Elvis. But that's kind of these jump blues guys, a lot of the term rock was really coming into fruition then. And so next, I'm going to show maybe the progenitor of rock and roll, and that's Big Joe Turner. And roll really came into use in his song Shake, Rattle, and Roll that a lot of rock people have covered. But this is the original, and this is an album, Rock and Roll, that came out. This is a reissue, I think, on Vinyl Lovers. But really good compilation of his material, like Big Joe Turner. And that's going to be my second one. And of course, next is the artist that really put rock music on the map, and that's, of course, Elvis Presley. This is the Sun Sessions, in which he does Junior Parker's Mystery Train. He also does Roy Brown's Good Rockin' Tonight, and rocks up Bill Monroe's Blue Moon of Kentucky. But this is a seminal album to have, all of his music he did with the Sun Sessions. Elvis Presley. Of course, also around that time you had Chuck Berry and a bunch of others, Little Richard, but one I'm picking is Buddy Holly, and unfortunately died in the plane crash, but he had started doing some innovative stuff in rock music with using classical musicians and so forth. This is a reissue of the Buddy Holly album. But another really important artist. It's a shame to not know what things he could have come up with if it wasn't for his early death. Also, kind of before that time and past that time, there was the street corner doo-wop sound that also took off in the 50s. And I'm going to use the Hollywood Flames here to represent that period. These are actually more like 57 is when a lot of these came out. Buzz 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 was the Hollywood Flames' biggest hit. This is like Bobby Bird, later became Bobby Day and had the hit Rockin' Robin. Then you got Earl Nelson, who became part of Bob and Earl and did the song Harlem Shuffle that the Rolling Stones covered. And that's Ray Brewster and David Ford. But these were the two main singers for the Hollywood Flames. And really, really important doo-wop band. And although a lot of these doo-wop artists did a lot of ballads, they also kind of rocked things up too. And so they've got a song, Frankenstein's Den, on here, which I was going to use for Harry's music room, but I didn't get that done before I went on vacation. So sorry I didn't make that contest. But anyway, the Hollywood Flames are going to represent the doo-wop era. And then early on in the 60s, there was the surf music scene. And of course, there was the Beach Boys. This is Surfer Girl, which is the big hit off here, and Little Deuce Coupe was probably the other hit. But the beach sound and surf sound was going on in the early 60s, and then everything changed when the Beatles hit and the British invasion. So they call it when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan show. This is the Beatles 65, which is a U.S. release, and it's kind of got Beatles for sale, except for they're missing 3 songs, and they put 3 singles from 3 British singles, I think, on here, and something from is it Help? Not Help. What am I thinking of? Hard Day's Night. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Yeah, but Hard Day's Night was the one song that came from that is I'll Be Back. I also do a couple of Carl Perkins covers on here, Honey Don't, and Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. But yeah, the Beatles were the important group to break into the U.S. and really started the British invasion. And another really important group was the Rolling Stones. Oh, this is a 67 album, but they brought blues into the rock scene with their music that came from over from the British Isles. This has a couple of big hits with Let's Spend the Night Together and Ruby Tuesday. But yeah, the Rolling Stones brought the blues element into the rock. And then, of course, another big important one was The Who. And this is their debut from 1965. The Who sing My Generation. And this is actually the recent 3 LP set, which was really nice that they put out. But The Who were important, of course, later on too, with the rock opera. Back when they started, they were big with the Mods versus the Rockers over in England, and the movie Quadrophenia talked about that. And of course, the Quadrophenia concept album and rock opera was a huge contribution for The Who, and they had some of the best musicians. I mean, one of the greatest rock drummers and bass player, wonderful guitarist, underrated, and Pete Townsend, great rock vocalist, and Roger Daltrey. So, but also, you know, the folk music scene was going on at this time, and someone that really changed that and rocked out and wanted to do him off the stage was Bob Dylan. And this is the album's Highway 61 Revisited, and where Bob took up the electric guitar and changed things forever, really brought lyrical content as more important in rock music, and that's why I'm putting him in here. This is Bob Dylan. Another important rock development was the British blues scene, and I could have picked a lot of people, but I'm choosing to show this Fleetwood Mac, or some people call it Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, where they do a whole bunch of blues numbers, like I Loved Another Woman, Shake Your Moneymaker, Hellhound on My Trail, but the Robert Johnson song. But a wonderful group, Fleetwood Mac, and their early beginnings when they were basically a blues rock group. And then, of course, there's the psychedelic scene that emanated, well, San Francisco was maybe the epicenter, but a lot of people were getting into psychedelic music all over the place. And so I'm going to pick, actually, Jimi Hendrix and his album, Axis Bold as Love. You know, you had the Beatles and Rolling Stones and other people were doing really influencing the psychedelic scene. But I'm using Jimi Hendrix. Another big scene was the glam rock scene, and I'm choosing Mark Bolan and T-Rex to represent that. And this is the album that had his biggest hit, which was Bang a Gong, but really important artist. Could have used David Bowie or Mott the Hoople, but I'm choosing T-Rex to represent that. And then they also had the progressive rock scene, where there's a lot of artists I could use. I'm going to use the Moody Blues, and I actually used the orchestra with this, the London Festival Orchestra. And this is their album, Days of Future Past. It has, the famous song, Nights in White Satin. Also, just found out today that Graham Edge, the drummer, who helped to form, one of the forming members of Moody Blues, that passed away. But important album, I think, in the progressive rock history. Also around this time, in the late 60s, early 70s, was the singer-songwriters were really in big vogue. And this is maybe one of the biggest singer-songwriters ever and was on the charts forever, and that's Carole King's Tapestry. Is going to represent the singer-songwriter era for me. And also, in the late 70s and into the early 80s was the birth of what they would call heartland rock. You got Tom Petty and others, but I'm going to use Bruce Springsteen to represent this. This is his album, Darkness on the Edge of Town. One of his best albums. I still think Born to Run is my favorite, but this is a great one and probably my second favorite of his. But just wonderful, what they would call heartland rock, and that's going to represent it for me. And a lot of times with the singer-songwriter and the heartland rock, then you had people were waiting for something else to really explode, and I think in reaction to maybe they thought rock was in the doldrums or I don't know what, but you had the punk scene, and I'm going to use The Clash. This is their classic album, London Calling. Could have used one of their first two, which actually came out before the Springsteen one. This one actually came out afterwards, I think. But like I said, and then the picture says it all, and actually this is, a homage to Elvis Presley's cover, the Elvis Presley cover, and there she got, I guess that's Joe Strummer getting ready to smash his guitar, I think. But classic album, classic punk album. They also use ska influences and dub, and really influential punk group that really expanded the horizons of what punk could be. And then I think out of that movement came having the punk attitude, but kind of using pop and power pop sensibilities. And that's where you get artists like Elvis Costello, you had Joe Jackson, you had Graham Parker, and some others I could mention. But this is his debut, My Aim Is True, where he, like I said, he had that punk attitude, but with some more pop sensibilities that really was a great songwriter, lyricist, and did so many great albums, especially all of his early ones. But he's going to represent the new wave era for me. And then in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, was really a resurgence of what they would call heavy metal. And the band I'm going to use to represent that is Iron Maiden, and one of their most famous albums, The Number of the Beast. Like heavy metal would really have a resurgence in the 80s. And that's going to represent that. And also into the 80s and then into the early 90s, you have the alternative rock movement, which they still use the term alternative rock. And to represent that, I'm using the debut from REM, a group from Athens, Georgia, and their album Murmur. And Catapult, so many great songs on this one. But like I said, REM is going to represent the alternative movement for me, and then rock ended. It was all over. But no, actually, it's going to end my video. But there are, so many splintered groups, splintered subgenres from there. They had grunge and things like that. But I thought I would just end with the alternative movement, and it's kind of still going on in a way, because sometimes it seems like it's hard to find rock music nowadays, because it is so splintered from what it used to be. But anyway, that's my response to Bill and Bill's vinyl lists. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope everyone's doing well, and everyone subscribe to Bill's channel. Thanks.